Please give a warm welcome to Miss Kate Williams.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So great to be here. As Kevin said, I'm Kate Williams, CEO of 1% for the Planet. I am also a PK, a preacher's kid. And if Shelley is still here, the preacher in my family is my mom. She was one of the early Episcopal priests. So I had a great storyteller in my mom, in my family. And I was a PK. So there should be a clicker somewhere, I think. Is that right? All right, so while the clicker is making its way to me, I want to just share what we're going to do today, because I was thinking it's the end of the day. It's a little easy to probably sit back a little bit, and you do get to sit back. But one of the points that I want to really make is that there's no platonic ideal of the impact leader, at least in my view. Each of us gets to figure out who we are in that box, what it looks like for us to define our impact that we care most about and how to lead for that. So I'm going to share some of my story and then some of the things that I've distilled from it, these three mind frames. And then I'm going to ask for each of you to be thinking about what that looks like for you. You won't have to share that, but that's an outcome that I hope for you. So for me, the story began when I was 18, and I really, truly did have a mountaintop experience that led to kind of unfolding my path forward. It was my why. So I was 18 years old, and I was in the Wind River Range, right in those mountains right there. And I was going on a trip. It was 5 days after my high school graduation. I was really ready for something different. And it was supposed to be hard. I mean, that was the goal. It was a 30-day trip. We were traversing the mountain range. It was about 100 miles. So I went into it knowing this is going to be hard. But then it was really, really hard. So my pack weighed about 80% of my body weight. So just imagine that, if you will. And then that was kind of part of the program. But then basically everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And one of the main things that went wrong, which is not something we could control, is that it snowed like crazy. And this was in June. And so we were not sent out with snowshoes or any equipment for that. We knew we'd travel on some snow, but it snowed a lot. So we were post-holing, meaning stepping into snow. And sometimes it would be up to your hips. And so you've got this heavy pack on, step into snow. I would do these like unexpected flips. Like my pack would just like pull me over, and then I'd have to figure out how to get back up. So lots of things like that. And I actually kind of enjoyed it in a weird way. It was so challenging, but some of it was laughable. But we were challenged. So we missed some re-rations. We had food that was supposed to come in, and the trails were blocked enough that the horses couldn't get in to bring us food. So we were chugging along, though. We were keeping going. We were managing it. It was all part of the experience. We were making progress on our route. And then things got really interesting. We were scouting a climb in these mountains. This is called the Cirque of the Towers. And one of our instructors fell and broke his leg. So that was for real. And this was pre-cell phone. And because this was a trip where everything was going to be about as hard as it could be, we were as far from the trailhead as we could be. So the two other leaders started making a plan. And the plan was to divide us into three groups. There was the runners to the trailhead group. They were going to go to the trailhead and get help. There was the get the instructor up to the pass, because the best way to get him out is a helicopter. So there was that group. And then there was basically the everything else group. So that was all kind of getting sorted out while another storm was coming in, all these things going on. And so we made some distance all together before we broke out. And we were at our camp, and we had slept the night there, and we were about to divide into these three groups. And so I was at this moment sitting kind of off in a corner. So I was over here, like on a rock, trying to be really subtle, because I had done the rookie thing of leaving my boots out overnight, and they were frozen solid. So we were all gathered. We were having like the group meeting to divide up, and I was kind of like casually trying not to make it look like I was working very, very hard to get into my boots. But I was. And then the lead instructor said, "Kate, we want you to lead the everything else group. And I was like, I'm actually just trying to get into my boots, but sure, yeah, I'll do it. And a whole bunch of emotions went through me in that moment, because I felt like I objectively don't have the skills to be doing any of this. But I'm super interested in this. I like these people. He picked me. He seemed not to notice that and I guess this is where I should deploy can you imagine putting your feet into frozen solid boots, right? Try to do that. It was not easy, but I got myself into them. And I was like, okay, objectively, I don't know things, so what I've got to do is tap into all the resources we have here. So we've got some really strong people. We've got a great cook. That person is really great at map reading. That person has a great sense of humor, which we're really going to need. And so we rallied, and we got ourselves up to the pass, and we stamped out a helicopter pad. That was the last part of our job together. And then it worked. The runner group had gotten a helicopter to come in. And I remember my moment, this moment for me was standing on that pass and seeing the helicopter taking off. Instructor was safe and sound in the helicopter, heading to the hospital. And I was really tired. My boots were wet now, they had thawed. I was hungry. I was dehydrated. I don't know if Ben is still here, but I probably had like a vein popping out of my neck in that moment because I was so pumped. And I had the burn too. I didn't know that language at that time, but I loved it. And what I loved was the feeling that I had of being in this group all together. We had done this together. And I loved these big mountains. The big wild space was so beautiful. So for me, that became the motivating feeling. That was this. That I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And it has taken me my life to figure that out, but that was where I got that spark, that burn, that led me to where I want to go. Oops, I think I just pressed the wrong thing. So for you, I'm just going to ask you while we're going through this to think through what is your this or that. What is the impact, the moment, the feeling, the burn, now that we have that wonderful language, that gives you that sense of, this is what I got to stick with. I know I love this, and this is what I want to do. So as I have carried through and sort of figured out my this, I've distilled it into 3 sort of mind frames, or frames of mind, that I think are really important. The first is mindset. And we've heard that term come up several times today, which is great, because really it's the internal work that you do to determine how you're going to show up. So, on that snowy morning when I'm kind of trying to hide my rookie mistake and I get picked to do something really hard, the mindset I had and that I had demonstrated throughout that trip was a lot of humility, because what else are you going to do if you don't know anything? But truly, a lot of humility. I was so psyched to learn everything. I loved the group. I loved the team. I had always played on teams. And I sort of got the feeling of when you're in flow state with a group of people. I loved that. So those were mindsets that I brought to it. And as CEO of 1% for the Planet, I have a lot of opportunities to figure out and to demonstrate the mindsets that will enable me to lead around the things that I care about. And sometimes those are like positive, proactive mindsets, like how can I serve the people who are working for me? Sometimes they're also ways that I have to respond to mistakes I've made. So just this last year, we had a tough year on the leadership front, and I realized that I'd sort of missed or misread some signals about a leader on my team, and that had an impact on other people. And when that became apparent to me, I sat with that, because of course the first thing I do is beat myself up, but then I realized, well, that's not going to get us very far. So, I brought a mindset of owning it. And then starting again. So I owned it. I went to the whole staff and I said, look, and I had to be a little careful, you can't say everything, but I owned very clearly, very publicly with our whole group what I had learned and what I was carrying forward. And then I invited us all into every day is day one. So tomorrow, we're going to start again. If you have questions for me, if you have unresolved things for me, bring them forward. But that mindset of openness and vulnerability, in that instance really helped, and is something that for me was part of how I show up to be true to what I believe in. And it's not quite enough. So the second frame of mind is mind shift. So you gotta have that mindset, you gotta focus on your own stuff, but then to really lead impact, to really lead things in ways that you want to create change in the world outside of yourself, you also have to have that mind shift, that ability to connect yourself to those around you and to the work that you care about. And so this is Yvon Chouinard. And when he founded 1% for the Planet, that was a mind shift. He was saying, look, Patagonia alone doing stuff actually doesn't matter. Of course we are going to give to the causes that we care about. But if we just do that, it doesn't really matter. What we actually need to do is invite others to join us. So the mind shift was to go from having a mindset of take action, do what you can in your sphere, to, in this case, and again, it looks different for everyone, create a way for others to participate. So we have a member, another member, we have many members, but another member other than Patagonia that has a really great way of embodying this mind shift, which is that the way they talk about their success as a company, it's Maine Beer Company, the way they talk about their success is that they talk about how much they were able to give away in a given year. And our model is that you give away 1% of sales. So to talk about what you give away is effectively just a different math problem for talking about your sales, but it changes everything because then you're focusing your team on something different. And so that's a mind shift. It's saying we're gonna think about what we do differently. We're gonna communicate what we do differently because it focuses our energy on what we most care about. So mind shift matters. But again, that's not quite enough. Necessary, but insufficient. The third mind frame that, in my view, really enables us to take what we care about and translate it into a movement around leadership is mind share. Although I think after Gerhard's talk, I'm going to kind of call it mind forest. Because I think that captures it so well, because it really is where we get to be more than the sum of the parts. It's not just those one-off connections. It's not just me relating to you differently. It's creating a community and creating a movement that share. And all of the connections that are beyond what we can see, but are also what we can see, all of that matters. And that's where the impact opportunity is. And again, in my case, the impact, the this that I care about is getting a group of people to do a hard thing together and wild places, natural world. So for me, what I'm trying to do is link together mindset, mind shift, and mind share in ways that create impact for planet and people. So right now, just to be real, all of that was just very positive. But this is a hard world right now. These conditions are challenging. There's so much going on that can be very difficult to figure out how to navigate all of this. And this is where we get to have a little physical moment. You don't have to get out of your chair, but when you see this, when you are operating in these conditions, it makes you feel kind of small, right? Makes you feel like, it's hard to navigate this. What we want is to do this. So go from this, you can do it just a little bit in your chair, to this, like put your shoulders back. Yeah, and if you aren't gonna hit anyone in the face, you can put your arms back. So that's physical, but if you approach the world that way, that's a very different way to approach the world. So I shared I had this hard leadership moment last fall, and then sort of entered into every day as day one, but it took a little while. And so when I started this year on January 1st, I sent an email to my staff. Most of our staff is remote. And I shared with them some intentions I had set for the year. And one of them is to have, as my motto, nothing without joy. And that comes from the Reggio Emilia education approach, which was at the small little preschool that my kids went to. Just an amazing philosophy of if you approach everything, even that, sorry, what I'm getting, if you approach that with the spirit of nothing without joy, Game changer, in my view. It doesn't mean you're not taking this stuff seriously, but it means you're owning that you get to change how you relate to it. You get to figure out what your mindset is in relation to that. You get to take it seriously, but you get to approach it like this and say, I'm open-hearted, I'm open to the ambiguity, I'm open to the connections with others, and we only get to live once. So being on this planet with joy is going to bring us a lot more energy as we tackle the impacts that we want to. The other thing that I have done is create a theory of change. And this is something that guides 1% for the planet, and it's very much what I believe. And again, particular to me, each of you will have a different way in which you're approaching leadership. But I found that it's super helpful to be able to not only articulate those mind frames, but also to be able to articulate a theory of change. And it's been interesting today to listen to the 100 stories step by step, very much what our belief is, that simple actions done repeatedly in community are how we drive change at scale. This is also how we drive change at scale. We drive change by connecting with others. So very much my belief. This is how we drive change at scale, by being that forest of impact. Okay, so back to you. Mindset, mind shift, mind share. You each have different experiences. We've heard today some really powerful experiences about childhood. I know every single person in this room, whether it's a positive experience or a challenging experience, has had a this moment. Doesn't have to be on a mountaintop. Probably better if it's not in boots that you left out in the snow overnight, to be honest. Doesn't feel very good. But that is you as a leader, so that then when the going gets tough, which it does. So right now, 1% for the planet is looking at executive orders, as we all are, that we don't know what those will mean for how we talk about our work. We don't know what climate change how climate change will affect us. Our small staff of 50, we've already had 6 people, so more than 10% of our staff, displaced or unable to work for some period of time because of fires or floods in the last 15 months. That's our tiny little staff. So we know these impacts are very real. And what's important is that we have a way of seeing a thread from our mindset, how we respond to those things, to how we approach them together, to how we drive change at scale together. So I'm going to wrap up here with my invitation to all of you, which is to really think about this quote. For those of you who are Tolkien fans, this is one of my favorites. This is in the Mines of Moria. And Frodo is just saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I have to take this ring all the way up over this thing, which they actually then have to go back down again. If we think we have it hard, that was hard. And I just wish I didn't have to do this. And Gandalf shares what I think is such an incredibly important quote for all of us. And I'll read it, so Frodo is saying, why do I have to do this? And Gandalf says, so do all who live to see such times. Ask that question. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. So back to that slide of all the hard things. Those are our hard things right now. There will be a different set of hard things in 10 years. There was a different set of hard things 30 years ago. It's important that we each feel them as the unique hard things, because we got to feel them deeply in order to respond effectively. But the less time we could spend on wishing them away, the less time we can spend on wishing it wasn't snowing, and the more time we can spend on saying, how do I get to choose to show up? What is the mindset that I'm going to bring? Who are the people that I need to connect with so I can implement a mind shift? What is the larger community that I can build so that I can drive that change at scale and lead as an impact leader that only I can be, because we each get to be only one thing. That's what we get to do in these times. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing your stories.
Kate Williams, everybody.